hey Twitch, hey YouTube, hey all you scholars out there. It's Makito, live streaming the Massachusetts Go Foundation double digit cube class. For the past, I want to say 6 weeks, we went over making good shape, and all those videos are on YouTube. They covered the Making Good Shape series by Richard Bozelich. Every Go player should know how to make good shape and how to spoil people's shape, right? It makes them a good player. So we went in depth about it, but now we're moving on to something that I care a lot about, which is attack and defense. When I was a 7Q, I was a 7Q for a few years, and I got stuck there for a long time. And when I read the attack and defense book, I jumped up to 3Q very quickly. The book just kind of changed how I looked at the game itself. And so I figured this would be the next best class for, to share with everybody here. So we'll be going over pretty much chapter by chapter until we get this book done, and I think it will be very helpful. Right now, I just got a random game in the background because I have like a little intro for the class that I want to talk about. Um, but let me go ahead and start it, and then we'll get to the variations after. So let's see. I just have a little script prepared. So the opening of Go, or the opening of a Go game, I find is really easy to study in my opinion. You can easily study the first 50 moves of pro games. That's actually very useful. You can study Joseki patterns. You can read direction of play basics. Books like Yulin Yang's Fundamental Principles of Go. That's a really good one. The Janice Kim Learn to Play series, though, that's a good one. So to me, learning the opening is very easy. I find a lot of confidence comes from my strong openings. But the middle game I find is really hard to study. Every game is different, and there's so many fundamentals and principles you can follow in the middle game. It's just I think it's really hard to study. Learning how to attack properly and defend your groups is one of the best ways to improve your middle game. Using examples from the James Davies book, Attack and Defense, we can study how to execute dual purpose attacks, how to defend with contact plays, how to force our opponents into submission, how to invade and reduce large frameworks, and when to fight co's. This is what the book really covers, these concepts. And this is vital information for every Go player. One disclaimer is you guys got to remember Go is a game. So when I started, you guys hear me talk about this a lot on my Twitch, or at least I mentioned it once or twice. But when I started this month, I had like almost a 10 game win streak, and I was feeling really good about my Go. And so I was like, you know what? I'll share all my wisdom on Twitch. So I started Twitch just this month. And after I started it, I started losing much more than winning, funny enough. I don't know if I'm distracted when I'm talking through the game or what, but the idea is that you got to remember that Go is just a game. If you win, it's great, right? You feel good, you feel intelligent. And when you lose, so what? Uh, I can help you guys with show you some really good moves and variations and concepts, but that doesn't imply that they're always the best. So it's kind of fun to devise your own moves. So my disclaimer is, just try to always have fun. Whether I'm in a large winning streak or a losing streak, I always just try and remember that goes a game. So I'm going to continue on. Uh, so there are two very important concepts to think about with the middle game. The middle game relies on the balance of territory, and the other is the balance of power. The balance of territory is very important. In fact, it factors who's going to win the game. So whoever has the most territory is going to win, right? The idea is that while you play, you want to keep count of both players' solid territory. This will dictate how you should be playing your game, right? What your strategy should be. If you're ahead in the count, right? If you have most of the solid territory, you can focus more on solid and safe plays and keeping ahead. Sometimes you have to destroy your opponent's moyos, because if you have more solid territory, most likely they have more potential. But the idea remains that if you understand if you're leading in territory, then you can play more solid and safe. While as if you're behind, let's say your opponent has a lot more territory than you do, you should definitely focus on picking fights, right? You want to make the game more complicated because you're already losing, right? And so it's better for you to try and make a big swing. They say pros keep a constant watch, evaluating the board every move. But as amateurs, we can't count every move, right? We don't have the time for it. I'm sure some people can, but I just couldn't imagine counting every single move. So what my advice to you is every time there's a break in the fighting, right? When you have Sente, when you don't feel like whatever move they did put pressure on you, you should globally evaluate the board and check each other's territory. Now, counting accurately can be very difficult. So, a good method to match, or a good method to use for counting, is to match black's areas with white's areas to the best of your ability. Like, we can look at this board, I suppose, just very quickly. The idea is black's territory is not solid here, but this is its framework, right? This looks like a solid territory to me, and white looks solid here. These kind of match in a way, right? And we continue, right? So white looks like he could live here. This might not be the best example because white might not be alive here, but it looks like, well, actually, black's dead here. So yeah, this is definitely solidly white's territory. So we can kind of try and match this up with what black has. Unfortunately, black doesn't have really solid territory. It's mainly potential right now. So this is a bad example. This is what I get for picking a live game. But the idea still remains, right? We can see white has solid territory here, white has solid territory here, and we can try and look for black solid, which, to be fair, I don't see much. I think I just see this, right? Because you can't even say this is his territory yet. Um, but anyway, to finish my introduction here, the idea is that that is the balance of territory, right? That's what we should be focusing on. We should be constantly evaluating territory. I will talk about the balance of power, but let's get to the variations now so we can see what's going on. So let's take a look. This is obviously a predetermined game I got from the book, and so it should be a lot easier to check where the territory is, right? So what we should do, it's now black's turn, and we should evaluate the balance of territory. Let's see who has the most territory, right? I think in this case, it's very clear white is dead here, and so black has a nice corner. White has broken into here. White has a corner here. And when I look, this corner looks bigger than this one. So black's winning in a, so far in this case. And then when we come to here, we can see that white doesn't have two eyes. This is a false eye. This is only maybe one eye, if that yet, right? Black still can take away this eye. So, for all purposes, we can look at this board and say that white looks pretty dead here. And if white is dead here, that means this is double points, right? Captures count as 2 points. So, this is huge. White does have a grasp on this and this, and so we can argue these are white's corners, but both of these combined still look smaller compared to this large area slash capture. So we can definitely say that black is winning in the balance of territory, right? Which means that black has more territory. So the question is, where should black play? Well, when we look at A, B, and C, if we play A, this is trying to lean on this group, right, to gain some more strength to try and take this area. But instead of, this is one of the good times to ignore the golden attachment rule, right? Because white is very strong here and here. So instead, white should jump up. And now, by making this stone live, these stones are in danger and these stones are in danger. And if white is able to produce a really big counterattack, right? If white is able to kill one or both of these groups, um, white is going to change the game, right? White is going to change the game and win in the balance of territory. So playing this way for black is very risky. The idea is black already has all the territory it needs to win. So if it just plays more calmly, it doesn't have to start a fight, right? It doesn't have to start this fight. So white would play something like, or sorry, black would play something like this. Allow white to kill your stone. Fine, just take it, right? And then push and jump, and then try and make some type of foothold, right? You're trying to make eye shape, and you're trying to connect to this group. We can see it's better for black to save this main group instead of worrying about this one stone and keep the lead than start a big fight. The proverb is rich men don't start fights. When you're far in the lead, you want to play safe and stable. If you're behind, that's when you want to make things complicated. So ideally, the way I look at it as the game is, if I was holding like, I don't know, $1,000 or $5,000 in my pocket, I wouldn't want to go into the back alleys, right, and try and start some fights with people. I would much rather stay really safe and keep my money and continue on, right? So that's the way I think of it in this case. So as long as you continue to evaluate the board, you will have a better idea of how to strategize your win, right? How to strategize your game. If you're far ahead like this, then you don't want to play dangerously. You want to play very safe. I hope you guys understand that concept. I mean, I think it's easy to understand, but it's very hard to practice, I think. Um, there's plenty of games where I was winning by a lot and then I lost because I did something dumb or something big died. And that's like the most frustrating way for me to lose, right? Is a game that I was clearly winning. Um, and so if I had always this concept in mind, evaluating the board, figuring out who has the most territory, and then playing properly, right? Playing as I would if I have the most territory, like solidly, then I could definitely earn some more wins for sure. All right, so let's look at this board. And once again, we should evaluate the balance of territory, right? This is the time where, honestly, like I said, pros will evaluate the board every move they make. But for us, we kind of want to do it like once we have Sente or once the fighting stops. So in this case, I have White's marker here as White's last move, but it actually is White's turn. So hopefully that won't confuse you. But the idea is, where should White play next, right? So we should evaluate the board. We see that white is very small here, and here's black's corner. Matching these two, black is already winning, right? Black's already beating this here, so that's fine. This black area is very large, so this is a very large area. And this is also pretty large, so black has quite a lot of points. White is facing black, so there's not a lot of points here, so very small, very small. And this could possibly be a large area. But when we compare Black's area and this area, these two areas to me look bigger than this one. So that leads us to our question and how we should play, right? Where should White play next? We have two options, one being to take the safe move and make sure to get your territory, or two, we can go on a attack, right? So if we're behind in territory, which we are, then it wouldn't be wise to take the safe move. And this is something that I think in real games I would mess up often, right? The idea is, like, let's say if Black's last move was this one, then I would usually want to cut the stone off and take my territory, right? That would be my thinking. But when we do that, like I said, this just isn't enough. And this happens all the time where I just don't take enough points, right? So Black Ataris, Hane, Atari, Atari, and then White protects its territory. So now you see White got everything that it asked for, and yet White is still going to lose, right? Because now White is just far behind in territory. This is not nearly as big as Black's two groups here. So even if White claims the territory, White is still far behind in the balance of territory. So playing safe doesn't work out here. That's the idea. So now, when we look at White's other option, right, which is when we look at this black group as a whole, it actually doesn't have two eyes yet, right? This is a false eye. This is a false eye if White pinches here. Or if black plays here, white can play in the eye of the three, right? The unsettled three. And so black doesn't have two eyes yet. It looks very like strong, but you can still poke at it, right? And because white can escape on both sides, this is going to be very good and profitable for white. So we see white breaks the tiger's mouth here and pinches the stone. And so white has two ways to go. Black blocks, black blocks this way, right? Because if black played here, then white can connect under. White goes and connects to its group on the side here. And then black tries to make two eyes, but white pokes here, and white has an option here and here to break this eye. So this was, of course, an example of a professional game in the book. White was behind in the balance of territory. So instead of taking the safe move, it found a way to keep attacking black and profit on the bottom while doing it, right? So whether black lives here or not, white is already making profit. This is much more bigger than what it was with this extra capture and more territory. And so in the end, black messes up its defense with this and ends up dying. And so white ends up winning the game. So this idea, and this is what I'm trying to plant once again, I think it's very easy to understand, but it's hard to implement, is that you should always be trying to evaluate who is in the lead of territory. And if they're in the lead, then we want to create fights, right? Just like in this example, we want to find a way to fight and profit. But if we were leading as white and we had more territory, then it would be okay to take the safe move, right? And just guarantee your points and win the game. Very, very important concepts. Definitely something that changed my way of looking at the game when I learned this. So let's now talk about the balance of power. The player who has stronger groups and more influence has more power. They usually, when they have this power, they can enlarge their areas a lot easier. They can reduce their opponents, and they usually take the initiative, right? They usually keep a hold of Sente when you have a lot of strong groups and your opponent's weak. There are many ways to use power efficiently. Three of the most common ways to use power is to attack, to invade, and to cut or fight, right? Let's look at some examples of these. So here's a very good one. This is one we covered in the Making Good Shape, which is how to use thickness, right? So when we look at the moves, it looks like black pushed along from behind, giving white fifth line territory. Usually I'm very happy if I'm getting fifth line territory. And you could argue it's a balance, right? So white is leading in the balance of territory, but black is gaining lots of power, right? And so with black's next move, we can push our opponents, right? We can push our opponents into our thickness. And while white has to run away to make life, black gains a lot more power and then can make points on the other side of his attack. This is how we should be trying to fight, right? Not technically to kill, but to kind of bully our opponents around so that we can make points on the other side. Black attacked white, pushing white towards his thickness. Black profits on the other side, and white has to fight for its life, right? This is how we should be using our power, right? And so giving away this fifth line territory can be painful for black, but it ends up giving you power, and you have to learn how to use it. Very, very important. A lot of the times when somebody has more territory than you generally have more power if you're playing properly. That's usually how it works. So let's look at this example. So in this example, we see white, made some territory here, and white's trying to make some territory here. All the while, black has made a very thick group, right? It's very strong. Um, so once again, black is leading in the balance of power. Um, this sets up a perfect opportunity for invasions. What I usually say, like when I'm thinking this way, is kind of like dropping bombs, right? Like I'm gonna implant a bomb in here, and white has to defend against it, right? So because black is so powerful, we can just jump in here freely without having to worry. So when white pushes, now white has two options. This would probably be the most basic one. And you can already see that black is able to link under here, right? Black is able to profit. Black has already made points and took away points from white. So this is a nice invasion here. The other way, white could try and counterattack, but because black is so powerful, right? Black can cut and hane, and then this cut is always present, right? White has two cutting points, and so if white picks one, black takes the other, and now white is gonna die. So this is even better for black here, if white tries to fight back, because black is just more stronger, right? And so that's our understanding that if we have power, not only can we use it to attack, we can also use it to invade. This is very important because a lot of the times in my games, I'll get a lot of central power, which allows me to invade the sides very easily. All right. So that's one more example of how to use power. Let us take another look. So in this case, uh, Black's third use of power is going to show you how to cut, right? We already went over attacking and invading. Now we're going to look at cutting, right? Splitting our opponents is very important in Go. And what we see here is, white took the corner. Maybe it was a 3-3 invasion or something. But black ended up getting a nice solid wall. And it's facing white's group. So now, when I look here, I see a knight's move. And something we should always know is knight's moves can be cut, especially if there's a broken dog face shape. This is the key to cutting knight's moves, is right here. So when black cuts through, white tries to connect, black cuts, white pushes, black comes out, black comes out, black comes out. And we see that white is between two strong black groups. So already this group is a bit uncomfortable, right? Because black is using its power to sandwich, in white, to pincer white. And now as black becomes stronger here, not only is it affecting this group, but it's also affecting the rest of the board here. So as we see, there's a large weakness now on the top. So let's say white plays, I don't know, something like this or whatever. Now we can see black can throw a bomb in here, which separates this and hurts this corner significantly. The idea is that this power is going to help us, right, attack this group, right? If white was to keep going something like this, you're going to see white's going to hit its head on our against our power, right? I'm not saying those are the moves specifically, but the idea remains is that black is gaining this power and is going to use it on the other side of the board. And can technically, if white sees this and fixes, right, fixes in some manner, well, now black can use this power on this side of the board. Um, so the idea is if you have more power, then you can play more aggressively. And learning how to use that power can change your whole attitude of the game. I have a good example of this when I was facing Struggle Bus. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to. I got one more variation here. So we'll cover this variation very quickly. Yeah, why not? But I'll try and remember the Struggle Bus comparison. So let's see. So black, this one is really important actually. This is something I talk about all the time, and it's something that I've said in the past that I don't see covered a lot. Still to this day, I really still don't see a lot of this covered. So, maybe it's mentioned, like in this book, it's mentioned, but I just don't see a lot of it on YouTube, right? Even now, today, if you go on YouTube right now and type in Run in Battles Go Game, my videos are, I think, one of the first to pop up, and there's barely anybody else. There might be one Dryron video that's not even about running battles, but it pops up anyway because you're typing in Go Game. But anyway, let's just talk about this example. This is very important, and I've covered it a lot. That's kind of my point here. But so black has two options. It can keep pushing for power or extend the territory. When we look, or when I ask, who has territory and who has power, right? So when I'm looking at this board, I see white has solid territory here, right? So this is already nice. And there's nowhere else on the board where there's any solid territory. You could argue this is fair, becoming solid, but it's not solid just yet. So Right now, white definitely is leading in territory, and black, if you consider this a thickness, then this would be very powerful, right? So black has is leading in the power. So just like I said, when usually your opponent has solid territory, generally on the other side of that, the other player has power as long as it's been playing properly and sealing in its opponent. So black has options. Let's look at the bad ones first. So when in the game, this is a real, I guess, a game that came from the book. Black played here. Now, white has this group here, which actually has lots of weaknesses, right? And so white should fix its group on the top. Uh, instead of just responding on the bottom. So let's look at the proper way, and then I'll come back with this one. So if white plays here, which makes the tiger mouth and presses on black, we can see that this is a running battle. This is a very important, and I see all the time higher players and especially double digit Q players leave the running battle and then they get punished for it, right? So let's see, when black left this running battle here, now whoever is going to get in front of the other is going to lead this game. So every single one of these moves is essential, and I'll show you why. So let's say if white just played somewhere else, right? Let's say white reacted over here or whatever. I just put the marker here. Now black's going to get the first Atari in turn on white. And so white starts to crumble. White's influence that it was building over here is now gone completely. And black's influence is affecting the rest of the board. So getting in front of your opponent, very important. Same if black was to, let's say, Tanuki now, right? Let's say black played over here or whatever. I'm just using this marker to show the Tanuki. White will now get in front of black in this running race. And we see black goes into an empty triangle. We know this is bad shape. And white fixes itself. And you can see now white has opened up completely. And white has all the influence of the rest of the board. So this is how important of a swing this fight is. It's so essential to stay in front of your opponent. And we can see why, right? It's so drastically different if one player leaves this fight. Same here. If black gets this turn, it's devastating, right? Black's gaining lots more influence. And there was some, I thought there was more examples of that one, but let's just keep going, I guess. Um, so now if black, I think you guys get the picture, right? You can see whoever's going to get in front is going to take the lead. It's very important. I feel like I had even more examples of this, but I think you guys really understand the concept, right, of how important running battles are, in shape, right? The $1,000 turn, tiger's mouse, all of this, right? Hitting the head of two stones, right? Hitting the head of these two stones. It's all very important shape that we've covered a few times. Um, so finally, let me just see. So in the game, let me just see if I was omitted. Yeah, yeah. In the game, white did play this way. So white got enough strength and then cut and then hit the shape point and Atari'd and came out. And even though black is able to save its group, we can see that white also digged into black's points and crumbled him, turned him into himself. And white got lots of influence, right? So this group is going to affect the rest of the board over here. This is very successful for white. And so we can kind of see, even if black tried to do the best it could, because black chose this move over power, right? Trying to make territory with thickness, which is wrong, right? That's breaking a principle. So instead of focusing on power, it then gets crumbled in, and white took the advantage. So all the way from the start, this was actually a bad move at this time. Instead, black should have played something like this, or break the tiger's mouth, and we can see black will now lead in the power struggle here. This was the recommended best move. And this one, it just shows how good this is for white when white gets this. This move also prevents a Tetsuji here. If black was to, play something like this later, after black gets a move like this, and then play something like this. This is actually very crucial for white here, right? There's so many ways this can be answered. That's good for black. So anyway, that is my point in this. So we've gone over the balance of territory, and we've gone over the balance of power. Um, we really should understand how important these concepts are, and I think they will help you improve your game if you really absorb this information. One of the final things we could do, I didn't have this planned, but I think it's a really good example of what we were talking about, was my game against Struggle Bus. So I don't know if you guys watched the stream or saw on YouTube, or you don't even know what this is, but essentially, Struggle Bus is a YouTuber, and we reached out. I reached out to him, and we've been playing a series of games, and so it's like a YouTuber versus YouTuber clash. And in this case, the computer says we're even, which is fine. But I remember during the stream, I watched his stream after, he was saying that he was very happy and confident with his game. Because right now, he was leading in territory, right? When you look, he has the solid territory here, he has the solid territory here, he has even probably solid territory around here, right? And so he's leading. We both counted, actually, funny enough, at the same time. He counted, he had 48 points. I counted, he had 47. And for white, the only thing I have is 10 solid points. So um, he's leading vastly in the balance of territory. And he said on stream that in his game, he felt like he was going to win this and that he was in a really good position. But for me, I felt the opposite. The same time that he was saying that in my stream, I was saying, okay, he has very little territory and I have all the power, right? I have all the balance of power. So I have a lot of strength here, I have a lot of strength here, and this is obviously a strong group because it's settled. Um, so we both of us had vastly different visions of this game. But in reality, the computer said we were like dead even, right? You look at the computer, it says we're at a 1 point lead for black. So funny enough, our views of the game are vastly different, and we were. It's a really good show of, just because you have lots of solid territory doesn't mean that you're gonna guaranteed win the game, right? If the other player has a good balance of power, as long as that player uses his power correctly, he will win the game, right? Well, it's apparently he'll lose by 1.4, but I think you get the idea. So in the game, I had all this power, and the whole rest of the game, black has to fight to reduce it, and white has to challenge it to get it, right? And during this game, I must have lost focus, or I wasn't thinking of my fundamentals. But I wasn't thinking that this was weak. Whereas my teacher, Raven, 117, if you guys know him, his name's Chris, he's a 6 dan. He was saying that this group is weak. He was saying that this black group is very weak, right? It can be cut and very weak. And then, of course, these groups were weak. And so at this time, I actually had 3 groups that were very weak, apparently. This one looks fine to me even now, but my teacher showed me some variations of like making sure, I think it was this move here, making sure that this doesn't have 2 eyes. Somebody, oh, I didn't know he had students. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He has a bunch. I think like over like 17 people, something like that. Um, but yeah, when we look, we can see that black is weak here, here, and here, and I totally missed that. The only thing I was focused on was this group, and by focusing just on this group, I totally lost the game. Even though I actually was winning, even after black lives in all 3 zones, I was still winning, and that kind of shows how powerful, right, the balance of power is. Um, but I was totally blinded this game, and wasn't evaluating. Well, I was evaluating the board. I was counting territory, but I wasn't using the balance of power correctly. Where right, I wasn't really aware of how weak this is. In looking at it, it's so obvious, right? It's so obvious. If White just like takes a move here, then this cut opens up huge, right? And if he fixes it, he's still very weak, right? He's still, as long as I keep him separate, he's still extremely weak here. So, man, for me to miss it, it was really embarrassing. So I think going through this book is going to help me back to my basics. Um, but that is really it. I mean, in the end, I was still up. I didn't feel I was up. I felt like I was down because none of my attacks worked out for me. I made some profit, like a good amount of profit, which caught me up and got me the lead. But at the time, I didn't know it. And I don't use the computer to evaluate. I think we disabled that button for sure. And I don't estimate scores when I'm playing serious games. So I thought I was behind and tried something drastic with a co-fight and lost it. And so I lost anyway. But uh, so I hope that helps you guys. Because for me, like I said, this book, these ideas really changed how I looked at the game and made me significantly stronger. And apparently, me forgetting some of these basics puts me down back to 3Q. So now I need to refresh my basics as well. I've been talking a lot. Do you guys have any comments, questions, anything at all? I would say definitely this is the end of my lecture for today. I haven't checked Twitch chat either, and people have been talking. So hey guys, sorry I can't see the chat unless I pull it up specifically. So I should look at that. But yeah, anybody else want to say anything?
Um, my only thought in this completely empty head of mine was I think I've heard like a lot of people, even like higher Dawn level players, have a lot of trouble using influence, which is basically what power is in this
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think it kind of I don't mean to sound condescending as a double digit Q. It kind of makes sense that like that was like a problem that you were having where like you had all the influence in that game but you didn't realize when you were ahead because it didn't look like you were ahead, kind of. Like things weren't working out the way that you wanted them to because you were getting successfully reduced,
Hmm.
but that was technically all according to plan.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I create lots of a large moyo or a big territory like that, the plan is actually for him to jump in, and then I have to find a way to attack him while making profit. And even in my failure, I did attack him and made enough profit to win the game. I just didn't see it, right? Which is kind of sad. But yeah, I will say, Pico, some games I'm very hyper aware of what I'm doing, right? Like splitting my opponents. It's called splitting attack, right? Keeping my opponents separate and small is something I tell Marty pretty much every game we play ever. But sometimes, I guess, and when I'm on stream, maybe I'm more distracted and not thinking as well. So what I will say is, yeah, I mean, you can say it's a good excuse not to know because sometimes Don mess him up. But trust me, when I'm at the my level where I'm supposed to be at 1K, like that's something I shouldn't miss for sure. Um, so that was pretty embarrassing, but it is what it is, and that's why we're here, right? And this goes back to what I said: Go is just a game. So, I do want to get better, for sure. But yeah, so going back to these basics should help. And yeah, this these concepts, I don't expect double digit Qs to master, but I definitely want you guys to start thinking this way. I honestly think it will help you change your whole game if you start evaluating territory more. If you start thinking on how to use your power properly, right? And now we only covered three ways to use power so far, but the idea always remains is that we use our power to attack, right? And when we're attacking, our goal isn't to kill, right? Our goal is to manipulate our opponents into bad positions and then use the profit, use the what we get on the other side, right? That's a very important concept. And then of course the other was to do your invasions, right? So doing again using these your power to invade is very important. And then finally, when we have all the strength, we can use that strength to play more aggressively. That's the point of having the power, right? Is to attack and use our strength to profit, usually on the other side, right? Um, so that's mainly it, Pico. I do appreciate you defending my bad judgments. Um, but yeah, I hope y'all take this as something away from this. We're gonna continue on going through this book chapter by chapter. That was the whole chapter one. Um, and I appreciate you all watching. Anything else you guys want to talk about, or if not, I'll read some Twitch comments and we'll move on. But I don't have anything else really for today. So let me go through the comments. No problem, Marty. Yeah, if you guys want to head out, that's fine. I'm just gonna read through the comments like once, and then probably end it here. So if you guys want to head out, that's fine. Or if you guys want to talk about anything, feel free. I'm always open to hearing your opinions. Let's see. So at 8:25, about almost 20 minutes ago, you said that having a wall lets you throw a bomb around 017. How do we evaluate how far power reaches and how far we can use such a wall? Is the rule height? Okay, yeah. So I can elaborate a little on that one. Let's see. Where was it? It was around here. So the thing about power is, so you're asking how far we can judge, when, how we can use this wall. The idea is when you have a strong group, you can kind of use the power any way you want in a sense. As long as black isn't going to die here, then that means that you don't have to worry about this group. And so, like, even playing something over here, right, would be nice, right? Or even as far, well, not as far as this. This might get cut. But, well, even this it might be okay, right? Like this looks a little wonky, but the idea is that as long as you're breaking up white and pressing them into your thickness, you're doing a good job. This case is just very easy because it's very clear black's going to be able to connect to its group. But if we were to, I wish, let me use my example again with my live game, right? My live game with Struggle Bus. This probably isn't the perfect example because at no point I think he has like a, well, here actually with this. So this was a bad move. And my, let's talk about this. So this was, I got taught this by Raven. The idea was if you have to connect yourself in like Gote, this is like apparently a vomiting move, right? Like if a Dom player sees this, they vomit. So the idea is this is a good example of having power and then how to use it, right? This is where I can throw some bombs in. The idea is that here, if I was to break up this group, right, break up this tiger's mouth, well, now I can keep black split, and you can see this becomes very weak. And even if I allow it to live, now this becomes very weak. So I'm saving myself without having to connect in Gote, which is good. But the idea is that as long as you're powerful, you can kind of just throw bombs wherever you want and kind of be okay. In this case, admittedly, this group is not connected, right? And so maybe now is not the time to throw bombs. But if it was, then technically I can just kind of throw this stone wherever I want, right? I can split them apart. I can hit shape points. I can pinch them to make it so that they can't have a base. Um, so you're asking how far you can throw it. The idea is as long as black is alive here, then you can throw it any kind of which way you want. You'll get varied results for sure. But that is the idea that if you're strong, you can kind of do as you please. That's definitely my advice. Let's take a look at some more of the chat. Scholar of Baduk on this very Twitch website. Okay. Uh, Hello, Baz. I think he's not looking to chat. Right. Yeah. So, guys, I don't have a second monitor and I can't pop off my little chat screen. So, I actually don't see the chat, unfortunately, when I'm doing Twitch until after. And this happens pretty much every stream. It kind of stinks, I know, but you got to bear with me. I just don't know who he's talking to. Isn't it very early in the morning for you? So, in the Massachusetts Association, we have a Discord, and I've been doing this class for over a year now. Every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I do a class for the Massachusetts Go Foundation. So, if you guys want to be a part of the class and talk on the Zoom meeting, um, you can join the Massachusetts Go Association Discord. I'll put a link in the chat at the end. And we would love to have you, right? We have leagues, we have this double digit Q class, we have single digit Q classes. We have Tuesday meetups where people go online just to hang out and play, right? And I think we have a Thursday meetup too. And there's also other classes. We have our own Massachusetts Go Association Twitch. So you guys are very welcome to come. And if you want to participate in these classes, you can. Let's see. Oh, and as for it's early in the morning, yeah, it's super early. It's 8:47 in the morning, so we're a 12-hour difference. I'm in the Philippines, so he says I always think I'm in Italy. No, not Italy. I go there for holidays. You'll be correct for winter break. Oh, you might be talking to Baz. Actually, that's my fault. Okay, I'll ask again later. Talking to someone. Which book is he talking about? The book I'm talking about is Attack and Defense by James Davies and Akira. I'm sorry, I forgot his Ishida. I think Akira Ishida, I believe. That's the Attack and Defense book. It's part of the Elementary series. Yeah, it looks like Pico answered that, so that's great. That makes sense. I should check that book again. If it is a good book if he's talking to high double digit Q players. Yeah, this book is definitely a higher level. It's not like very basic. It's not like the Learn to Play series with Janice Kim. But after a year of doing this class, right, we've gone over a lot of those basics many, many times. You guys can check my YouTube. I have almost all the classes on there. Man, well, when I start recording anyway. Um, so now we're definitely on a much higher concept, but this is that concept that I wish I knew when I was a younger player, right? If I read this when I was like a kid and a 15 or 10 Q, I probably would have gotten much farther faster. This is something I read when I was an adult. I think I was around 24 or 22, somewhere around there. And I really wish I did read this earlier in my Go career. So that's why I'm bringing it to the beginners, right? I never finished it. Baz says he never finished the book. And wouldn't you know it, attack and offense is one of my weaknesses. That's funny. Yeah, it was one of my biggest weaknesses for a long time. I mean, even now I start messing up again, right? I start going back into bad habits. And that's why reviewing this is so important. I suppose even for single digit Q players, it's important to rein in some of the chaos. All right. All right. I finished all the chat in Twitch, so I really got nothing else to say for this today.